Okay, I don't know why, but every single time since I have upgraded to Windows 11, when I close OBS and open it back up, it sets all my device stuff to default, which won't register in any sound. So I got Steve there that was just telling us that, and I apologize. So yeah, tonight, episode 337, we're talking about heavy rain. And my idea on this was just a quick little chat about camping in heavy rain. Because like I was saying before we found out we had no sound again, hopefully next time I'll check it. At least here in Nova Scotia, we have a lot of rain in the forecast. And it's one of those rains where it's like drizzly for a while, then heavy for a while. Drizzly for a few days, heavy for a few days. You may get a day in there where it's nice and sunny and everything is good, and then you're back to rain. You get that wetness. It gets in the woods, it stays in the woods. And of course, since people seen that in the forecast, the number one complaint or grumble that I've heard so far is, oh, it's too wet to go in the woods. And at least here in Nova Scotia, most of this summer, we haven't been allowed in the woods. So I didn't want a little bit of wetness to deter people from getting out there and enjoying it. I know myself, and as I said, I'm sure Ben will back me up, a little bit of rain will not stop you from getting in the woods, provided you do a little pre-prep. Or I guess that's a, double, you know what I mean? A little prep or a little pre-readiness.
Yes. I mean, of course. Wasn't someone once told me there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothing. So essentially, that's not the word. There's an expression for it. But basically, if you're properly dressed for the environment, every environment is hikeable, is campable, is usable. So I often get, when I talk to people about camping, they're like, "Oh, you like camping? What do you do with the rest of the year?" And I'm like, "What do you mean the rest of the year? Like this is a year-round.
What do you do?
This is a year-round event. Like I didn't know you could take a week off." But no, like this is something we like to do all the time. So
absolutely, I find the woods a little bit more interesting when it's a little damp out there. And I do agree there are some downsides. Things get slipperier. I mean, travel is a little harder. We've talked about that in the past. That's not what we're covering here today. If you want to talk about that, look back at the previous episode of Camping in Severe Weather. We talked about all that, including heavy rain. But I want to talk specifically about what you can do to get yourself set up for camping in heavy rain, or some considerations, and maybe some tips and tricks that Ben and I have done over the years. Now, like Steve said over here, the Drifting Spore, love being in the woods in the rain. It's the best experience. And that's what I was saying. It's kind of a different experience. There's a lot of new sounds and smells and stuff like that. And I rather enjoy the smell of the woods when it's a little damp. I don't like humid damp because then you get that musty smell, but like a fresh little rain that's falling out there, you get like this amazing smell as all the plants open up their pores and stuff like that to try and absorb that water in. They also let out a lot of nice aromas, and it's actually pretty beautiful, man. Not to sound corny, but I think it is. What about you?
Yeah, for sure. So you want to concentrate more on like how you set up. So we're not going to. Okay.
Little of both. I mean, with a focus on how to get out there and then some considerations to be aware of.
So I think where I will like to start, if you don't mind, is you talked about being prepared. So a couple of quick and easy things is, let's start with just a quick poncho, because we've talked about ponchos here in the past. I actually kind of enjoying mine. I have a new one I picked up for a trip a little while ago. I have a bunch of rain gear, don't get me wrong, but the poncho is nice because it fits in my pocket. I can fold it in. It actually has a pocket. It folds into its own pocket, which is great. And you can slide that into a pocket. You can put it in you can hook it to your waist. You can have it readily available because honestly, even on rainy days, it's not raining all the time. So you want something that's quick done and quick removed. Because we've said before, if you wear rain gear all the time, you're just going to get wet internally. So something that's breathable, and the beauty of a poncho, for example, is it is breathable by the fact that air can come up and down from underneath it. Just prevents water from getting to you. It has a lot of open air for air circulation, which is important. The beauty of that too is most ponchos act as a tarp in a pinch.
Exactly. And that's kind of where I was setting up, was just getting your gear ready. Ponchos are amazing, like you were saying there, Ben. Easy on, easy off, lots of airflow, multiple uses, and it's easy to throw in the bottom of your pack and forget about. You know what I mean? They don't take up a lot of room, or at least the one I have doesn't. I don't have a fancy one, don't get me wrong, but I mean, it's still a decent little poncho. It folds up into a pouch about yay big, maybe a half an inch, 3/4 of an inch thick, goes in the bottom of the bag, it's always there.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you can get it, and not everyone has a poncho, I'm not going to lie. I mean, they're not expensive. So if you're interested in go on Amazon, I think I picked mine up for $20, $22, $23. And they're cheaper than that too, if you want. So choose the one you want. I just went one that was moderately better material than others. And I'll probably get a few years out of it before I decide to replace it or do something else with it. But it is cheap insurance for when you're out, and quick and useful. And like you said, it can be used for a few things. If you don't even have that, my next advice is a garbage bag. Find a large garbage bag, cut a hole in the top, and boom, you have most of your body covered. And then get yourself, and this is really good for almost any weather, a decent hat. Now, this is not a good example, but it's the closest thing I have. You know, something with a bit of a brim, something with some waterproof capability to it. With that over a garbage bag, you are going to be dry. It'll keep most of the water off your face, your shoulders, and then everything else is fine. So that alone makes you fairly capable. And of course, the last thing, a good pair of footwear.
And if you have the chance and you know the weather's coming up, applying some dubbing or mink oil or waterproofing or something, that's just going to add a lot more to it. I know a lot of boots come and they say they're waterproof and things like that. It's not a bad idea to get something else to go on to it. Now, with leather and stuff, I like mink oil or dubbing, mink dubbing, whatever you want to call it. It's a natural, kind of semi-natural. They put some preservatives and stuff in it, so that's probably not natural. But anyway, and you can rub that into the boots. And that works amazing, and it still allows a little bit of breathability. Now, I used to have an old pair of boots that was Gore-Tex, and I know you're familiar with Gore-Tex, Ben. The military was big on it there for a while. And they were great. I think they were STGs or something like that. Super expensive boot, but those were literally one of the best pair of boots I had. You could lace them up, and if you tied them tight, you could walk into water up to your knees and walk out, and like your legs would be wet, but as long as you got them tight, nothing could get down in, minus maybe a little bit at the top where it might wick down a half an inch. Your feet are dry. If you got something like that, that is amazing. But yeah, a little pre-prep on the gear, a little bit of proper gear for the weather. What's Steve saying over here? Even breathable rain gear will soak you where the poncho or where a poncho doesn't. I actually managed to wear a poncho, throw up a ridgeline, transition it to a tarp, cook a meal under it, and then slip it back on. And that's the thing we're talking about. Ponchos are very utilitarian.
Yep.
Steve just proved all our points.
So it's, you know, he did, and thank you, Steve. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of the point. Something like that is easy to take, easy to maintain, easy to carry. And those are things that are really neat. And the other thing is a little bit of skill on how to properly set up a good tarp. So a tarp doesn't have to be huge to keep you dry. Honestly, you can get away with a fairly small tarp. Probably something like 4x6 is more than adequate to make a quick rain shelter in a pinch. Will a bigger tarp do? Absolutely. You know, as big as you want to go, you can make use for it. But what you need is something that can cover you. And what I like to do is put it on a little bit of an angle, so figure out which direction the rain is coming from, stretch it up to slightly above the head height you plan on being at, and then slope it back at probably about a 45-degree angle if you can do it. Maybe a little bit more or less. You don't have to be exact. And you can cuddle under that, sit down on the ground, pull up a stump, whatever you need. If you got a little folding chair or something like that, and you can hang it there, set up your stove, cook a little meal, watch the lake. You ever watched the lake in the rain? It's amazing. or a river or whatever. Just do your thing. And you can honestly have a wonderful day just doing that.
Oh, absolutely. And I love that you actually transitioned right into the next spot I want to go is site setup. On the note to that wedge that Ben was talking about, we kind of proved the usefulness of that. Me, Ben, Steven, no longer with us, some of Ben's family there, we went down to a spot here in Nova Scotia to camp on the side of a lake, and we blew in, and it was like heavy wind and rain. And I see Ben smiling, so I know he's remembering what we're talking about. And he had a tarp. It was a synthetic tarp, and we set it up, fairly large one. And I mean, this thing was hammering in the wind, and we kind of got under it. Took us forever to get a fire going, and we were using lighters and everything we had available to us. We weren't making no primitive fire, and it took forever to get it going. But once we did, kind of, it was actually pretty snug under there, even without the fire. I mean, it was far better than being exposed to the elements, but we hung out there for quite a while, playing with the fire and chatting and carrying on and telling stories and whatnot. And it was a grand time. I really enjoyed that. It was kind of nice. As interesting as it was having the wind beat off that tarp and us all take bets on how long it was going to last, it was actually really fun adventure, and it was nice to hear the wind flapping on it, learned a lot about what the tarp was capable of. It didn't actually fail during our setup. It failed because we left it up overnight, if I'm not mistaken, and we were trying to use a center pole on one of the spots, and I think the wind just eventually, like, we're talking pretty high winds here, folks. It was quite violent at times, and I think it just eventually let go around the seam.
So it was a mech guide tarp, still nylon, and there is a center point to it, if I remember correctly, there's basically a square glued on and maybe stitched, but I think it's glued on for the most part.
It's stitched on now, then glued.
And in the wind and the and everything, it managed to flapping around, and the impact of the wind, and I mean that was probably like one impact per second for a long period
Hours.
of time. Eventually that let go, and that was the failure point for it. But I mean, that was a big tarp, and it was a good tarp. And I do miss that tarp. I think you still have it. You're still using it?
I do. After the failure, Ben was kind enough to give it to me because I had plans on how I want to try and fix this thing. I went through several iterations that failed. And the one that finally worked, and this is a little above and beyond what the common person would may be able to attempt. But anyway, I ran it through the sewing machine, stitched it all on. Then I went and I got hose glue from forestry hose, like the same forestry hose that you use to fight fires. So it's the hose patching glue for that that's good up to 300 plus PSI. And anyway, I managed to get some of that on it, the cold patch stuff, and I squeezed it in between two pieces of styrofoam, and I left it for like a week just to cure. The only problem now is it's not very flexible. So it is the exact roundness of the bottom of the carry bag, and it is now the bottom point. It has to go in the bottom, or you don't get the tarp back in the bag.
Yeah. Anyway, I mean, it's a good tarp. I think I spent like over $100 on that tarp. It's the most expensive tarp I think I've ever bought.
And it's still a real good tarp, Ben. Like, it's at some point, you ever make it back here, I'll show you the repair. It's all yours.
So, but yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. So, I mean, you can have a lot of fun. But I think that's the other thing. Like, we had, the 3 or 4 of us, because I think Sky stuck with me for the whole time. So there's at least 4 of us most of that trip. And we stayed under that tarp, and we had a fire, and we had stories, we had a good old time. And it rained. Like, that was heavy rain. It was not the nicest weekend to do that kind of trip. And I mean, we had a great time. I don't think anyone left that with bad memories.
No. The reason I'm chuckling over here is because that is the time from the story when I thought the lake was flooding. So that's how heavy it was raining. So moving on to that note, you can sleep in the rain. I set mine up a little hastily. There were some things I could have done that would have made it more efficient. One, protect those guy lines and make drip lines off the guy lines. So if you're hammock camping or something like that and it's going to rain, make drip lines, which is literally you can take a piece of string, tie it around your guy line and let it dangle down. As the water runs and hits it, it will just drip down and not potentially into your underquilt, which is what happened to me. I've heard like the tag off a pop can. You can literally rest that on there in a spot and it'll collect and drop down. It doesn't take much. Something as simple as that would have changed the entire outcome of my little disturbance. But yeah, so set your stuff up correctly for the rain. Take the extra, what would have took Ben like 5 extra minutes to set my site up a little better, pull the lines a little tighter, put the drip lines on, and narrow my pitch in a little on my tarp. 5 minutes, maybe.
Argumentatively, if you're properly prepared, 10 seconds.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Not a lot of time. At the moment, I was like, it'll be fine. I should have taken the extra couple seconds. I didn't have a bad time. Learned a lot of good things. But yeah, just take the extra couple seconds, do the niceties. If I had that stuff on, I would have slept snug. You guys, you and Sky slept up in your hammocks like A1, never got wet at all, I don't think.
No,
And
no,
Ben,
we
or Steve, on the other hand, he slept in a tent in a hollow. He had a little water in his tent, but the way he did his setup, he brought a little larger air mattress, so he never actually got wet, but there was water in his tent. On that note, if you're tent camping, don't sleep in a hollow. Get up on a little higher point so water runs off.
Yeah. Ideally with camping, you always want to, if you're sleeping on the ground, you always kind of want to be, if there's possibly a hump with a mostly flat and in low areas around it, that's where you want to be. And then of course look at the overall area. Will the overall area flood? But in a flat field, everything floods. So what you're looking for, and I guess the best way to picture this, if you're in like a baseball field and you think of a pitcher's mound, it's just that one raised thing on a field. That's the last thing to go underwater. So that's what you're looking for. The tiniest hill or a knoll, anything that's a little bit over everything else, that'll give you potentially hours of difference between when you flood and when everything else floods. You only need a couple inches to make a huge difference.
Yeah, and if you're sleeping on the side of a hill or something like that, um, if you have that slope that's always kind of coming down, like there's what I'm picturing is like you have your hill, then you're landing where you are, and then a second hill. You get that little saddle or bridge where you're sitting in and sleeping. You can, if you take like a cat hole shovel or something like that, even a tiny trench going around your tent and leading back down those boundaries will collect that water and run it away from you. So once again, couple minutes of prep. Even I've seen people just drag their heel if the ground is soft enough. It only has to be a tiny divot for that water to collect and run out of it. And it only needs to be 3% grade for water to run downhill. So it's not really a lot of time or effort, providing you do, pick your location good, make sure the ground is good, because ultimately it's not all rocks. Well, rocks drain good, but they're terrible to sleep on. But yeah, a little site prep, you can sleep in the rain perfectly happy, perfectly snug. If you are a tent sleeper and you know it's going to be out there and a little wet, once again, re-waterproof your tent. I dig my tents out and re-waterproof them every spring, regardless if it needs it or not. I take it out for a day, let it air out, get all the old crap from being in its bag out and air out and stuff. Then on a nice warm day, go out there and hit it with 2 coats of, I was about to say undercoating, but water sealing. Let it sit for another day, so you do have to find like 3 nice days in a row. And then on the end of the 3rd day, usually I put it in my sunroom out here and let it air out for another couple days. But at that point, as long as it's dry, you can potentially fold it back up, get ready to go. I think most of those waterproofers have anywhere between 12 to 24-hour dry times. I like the ones that take a little longer. They seem to soak in a little better. But that could be simply brand name that I'm using too. And I mean, I encourage everybody to do your own research.
I mean, I've used ones in aerosol cans. They dry really fast. And then there's, yeah. So there's a few options out there for sure. But what do you do though if you don't have a tarp?
So there is some things you can do to try and get out of the weather a little bit. And finding natural shelters, it's a little trickier than people let on, like especially on TV and stuff like that when you're in the woods. But you can do stuff to, are we talking like survival situation, or you're still having a good time but you just want to get out of the water?
Well, I mean, either or. There's a couple of things I've noted. Like if the rain isn't too heavy, if it isn't too extreme, oftentimes if you find the right trees, you can stay underneath. You'll watch this, like just walk through a wooded area in the rain, and you look. If you see dry ground under a tree, that tree is managing to either absorb or shed that water out away from itself. So, oftentimes, especially larger, big coniferous or not deciduous trees, deciduous trees will not be wet at the base. And so in that case, there's a spot you can go because the way the leaves are layered, it'll basically shed that rain out to the edges. And that's where the roots are actually designed to pick up most of the moisture. So it actually is dropping the rain where the roots are small and absorbent, not where they're thick and trunk-like, because that's not useful to them. So look for those bigger trees, and oftentimes you can cuddle up under them. Even some good fir trees and stuff in underneath will offer amazing protection against rain, wind, snow, you name it. So that's one thing. Other things is naturally overhanging cliffs or small cave-like structures can oftentimes provide amazing shelters if you can find them.
Sorry, what does?
Caves are naturally occurring cliffs, right?
Sorry, I was going to
Overhang.
comment on something that Steve was saying there, and I lost sight of what you were saying. I was actually going to talk about caves. Say your
Yeah.
piece, because you were leading into it, then I'll follow up.
What? I missed that. You literally went silent for a second.
Oh, I was just replying to a comment that Steve made there about deciduous and coniferous trees, and I was going to say, well, what's the third one? Because there is actually a third classification of tree. Well, research question. See who knows. Anyway, yeah, caves are great. So if you see any steep cliff faces, things like that, it's a good place to get in there. I recommend shallower caves than deeper caves. Deeper caves tend to attract larger animals for permanent residences, but keep in mind, caves also being a natural area of dryness and stuff like that, other creatures may look to take shelter there too. With shallow caves, like ones, if you're standing at the cliff of it, it's only maybe 2 to 4 feet in. You're probably going to attract smaller things, maybe medium-sized animals, but if it's a deeper cave, like you stand at the mouth and you're kind of trying to see the back of it, now you're into larger mammals. Not so much of a risk here in Nova Scotia, though you can get into it. Like, usually it's smaller dens, people trying to crawl into a hole or something and finding out that it was a bear den or something like that, right? But, I mean, a lot more of a problem potentially out where Ben is, and especially central Canada, like with the boreal forest and stuff like that, because you're going to get into grizzlies and stuff like that actually make their homes in areas like that. So just be aware, it's not a free for all. Be cautious, but Ben's right. Beautiful natural shelter.
Yeah. So I mean, I've seen a few things. I've also found hollowed out trees that you could potentially use, or naturally leaning trees. So there are like natural lean-tos that sometimes you'll come across. This is a fallen tree with a bunch of branches that are kind of broken off. Oftentimes you'll need an axe or something to clean an area off. The only thing is make sure that however it's braced is actually solid, because in rain and wind, that's when it might very likely that tree may come down another foot or two, if not all the way to the ground. So be really careful what you huddle under that make sure that it's secure and safe. So if you're finding a tree that's fallen over, make sure it's like hung up on a sturdy fork in a tree, or it's nipped between two trees that aren't going to move, if you're using that as a shelter. But again, natural windbreaks and rain shelters do exist in the woods and can be found throughout the environment.
Yeah, sorry, I was once again answering Steve there. He kind of came up with it. So the third classification that you really only get here on the East Coast, it's called something else in your area, Ben. And I don't even know if they ever put it into the forest guides, but here in Nova Scotia, and once again Atlantic Canada, the third type that we're talking about is called NS/, and it's a fuel type that's specific to areas that are coastal and get a lot of windsweptness. So it's not really a bush, it's not really a shrub, it's not really a tree. It's kind of like this conglomerates of all of it jammed together. Burns really readily when it does catch on fire, but alders. Think alders, Ben. Hard to get them going, but once they go like a bugger, don't they?
Oh, I've seen alders warp stoves.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I was thinking it was going to be something like a cactus, because alders still in.
No, an alder is just kind of a part of the NS/. Like I said, it's kind of the conglomerates of all that together. Think of like if you've ever been towards Sheet Harbor there and you're going along the coast and you see along the cliffs and stuff there, that kind of gnarly bush-looking stuff, but it's not really a bush. It's like a tree that shrunk and blew up. That's kind of what it is.
Tuckamore.
Yeah, like a lot of our juniper or tamarack, whatever you want to call it, they'd fall into that unless they actually get high enough to become a ladder fuel. It's just a really weird classification here that I thought was interesting and unique to our area. Anyway, different subject. Yeah, so getting out there, you can still have a ton of fun. Just take a little prep. Rain offers you a couple good things, like readily available water, providing you have a way to contain it. Things are generally stay cleaner, depending on where you're at. And like I said, it offers a whole other beautiful experience. I love the sound of the rain falling on a tarp, tent, whatever. So I'm laying there going to sleep. Like, it could be the middle of the day and I can crawl under a tarp and put up like something over my eyes so it's a little dark and I'll fall asleep. That sound is like
Uh,
the nature's best lullaby.
yeah, I mean that is true. I can vouch for that. Rain on a tarp is probably one of the best feelings, especially if it's dark and you don't want to get up and do something. If I get rain overnight, I absolutely love it. If I get rain even early in the evening and I can crawl in the hammock, I like it. I'm a little less excited about it in the morning because I know I got to get up and pee and get breakfast and then I'm like, I don't want to get up. It's raining, but the rest of the time I don't mind it. And the one thing to keep in mind is the hardest part about doing anything in the rain is starting. And I stand behind this. Is once you get moving in the rain, it ain't that bad. But that initial thing is I'm dry and warm and comfortable, and I don't want to go out in that, is a real feeling. But once you get past that, it's actually not too bad. And I do enjoy a good walk in the rain and seeing things. What I don't enjoy is the drying off period. So there's the other thing. This is my last piece of real advice. If you're going to be out in the rain, is take a small dry bag with a set of clothes you can change into, and try to make sure any clothes you do take is quick dry. And if you're unsure if it's quick dry or not, you'll know real quick after it gets wet, because quick dry clothing, which feels just as wet, honestly, when it's wet, but as soon as the sun comes out, you'll find it dries really quickly. Things that are high in cotton and stuff aren't quick dry. Cotton holds water like it's no
I was
one's
going to say,
business.
your organic materials tend to hold water really well because, funny enough, they're organic. Synthetics tend to
Yeah.
shed it better.
Yeah. So when I'm looking for stuff that's quick dry, I'm also looking for stuff oftentimes that is thin and light, so there's not a lot of volume to hold the water. And so even if it does hold a bit of water, it goes through. You'll feel it in your hands. It's more you pay attention to it. But if you're spending time in the woods, that's what you want to do. Something that's quickly dries, and that's just something you can change into. So if it does stop raining, you can change into your dry clothing, and you'll feel much better about it. So yeah, that's kind of the thing for that. Like, I don't know what.
No, that's the end of it. The only outro I had to this was, if anybody doubts you can't have fun in the winter, in the heavy rain, a few episodes ago, when I say a few, it was, a fair couple of months ago now, we did an episode
Yeah.
about Stephen Kesting, about a man that took a boat tour and basically rained every single day. I highly encourage you to go back and listen to that, or even pick up his book, Perseverance. It's a good read, and he comes up with a lot of good stuff in that too, about how he kind of fought the weather. And we talked to him a little bit on that episode and talked about how he fought the weather. And you know what? If I had a thought about this better, I should have thrown him an email to see if he wanted to come in on this episode, because he did say he wanted to come back and have a chat sometime. We should reach out to him again, check in with him.
We should. Yes, I did reach out to him just as I bought his book, because I was in one of the universities, and I went by their bookstore, and I was like, I should go in there with the kids. And when I went in, I seen his book right in the front of the store, so I was like, I got to get one of those. And it is one of the signed copies, so that was pretty good.
Nice. But I think that's a good spot to end here tonight. Like I said, I didn't want to beat a dead horse with this. We talked a lot about some of these things in the past. Now we're just putting a little finer tip on it. If you were interested in more information like this, or about other inclement weather that, maybe you're looking for tips and tricks to get out there and have some fun in, definitely shoot us some sort of contact there, email, message, otherwise. And we'd love to have a chat and maybe drag you on the show with us and have your question live. We definitely got to get like Steve and those back on here on the episodes again. I know he's hovering in the comments there, so I'm dropping the hint, but I mean, we should step in with some of our past guests and catch up with them.
Yeah.
It's been a while since we had a guest.
Has been.
All right, Steve, you have yourself a good night too, buddy. I was just reading his comments there. All right, folks, you guys have a great night. Ben?
Night all. Get out there, have fun, stay dry.
All right, folks. See you next